right, and that's 4:05, everyone. We can go ahead and get started. First, want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Mia Cash. I'm Overpass's Talent Advocate Manager, and I'm really proud to begin this Remote Sales Live series with our Overpass Sales Manager, Dennis Hamilton. Just as a few housekeeping rules, we will leave all questions until the end after Dennis has finished his presentation and thoughts. So feel free to use either the chat to put in a question. We also have the Q&A feature as part of this webinar, where we can keep track of the questions that have been answered and all of that. But would love now to introduce our speaker this week, Overpass Sales Manager Dennis Hamilton. He is a bilingual business consultant and leader with 30 years of experience in technology, sales, marketing, operations, finance, and management. As the owner of a national sales organization and with experience as a Fortune 500 executive, Dennis has really honed his passion for building organizations and delivering results to help others find success. We are so glad he is with Overpass, and we're so happy to welcome him as our host for this very first Remote Sales Live. Dennis, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for everybody for showing up. First of all, I see some familiar faces in there. Welcome back. I know some of you know me, some of you may not. What I do here at the company is basically coordinate all the activities of the account executives and helping everybody find the right client and the right jobs and kind of that matchmaking between the two, so to speak. But I've had a couple of years business experience. As you can see, I'm missing a lot of hair and it's not as dark as it used to be. So been around the block a time or two. So just so happy that they asked me to do this presentation. So what I'm going to do each week is just kind of, we're going to kind of begin at the beginning. And that's why we're talking about goal setting today. But we'll take these full course and go through everything from like best practices in interviewing, get into some sales ideas. But even more importantly, your comments are really important because based on what you ask us to present on, we can form segments around that. And I am more than happy to do that. So if there's something that we see that's a common pain point, please reach out to us because that's something we'll be able to address as we go forward. And as long as we have good attendance at these meetings, we'll just keep doing them. You guys may get tired of me and we have to find somebody smarter or wittier or something like that. But until then, I'll be here each week. So today, what I wanted to really focus in on is goal setting, because I know all of us have started a remote career at some point. I was not always remote. I've worked out of conventional offices my whole life. And even though I've worked some remote in other positions, it's not been what I did as a baseline. So I know one of the first challenges I had when I came to Overpass is literally getting back in that habit of like, okay, I'm working out of my home. What am I going to do every day to make sure I'm focused, motivated, and what do I want to get out of this experience? Which kind of tees us right back up into goal setting. So as we go through these slides, I'm going to give you some analogies and you guys are going to figure out I love stories. So there's always a story or two, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end. But I think the number one thing when you talk about goal setting is always begin with the end in mind. And I had a business consultancy for about 18 years. So we dealt with businesses every single day off and on. And one of the first questions I always ask a new client, tell me how your story ends. Because in that definition, I understood exactly where the client was at, where they wanted to get to, and if we were a good fit to form a business relationship. So when I talk about beginning with the end in mind, you know, a lot of times in goal setting, we think, oh, I've got this one goal. And I'm like, no, don't do that. You know, where do you end? And we'll talk a little bit about the GPS analogy, but if we were all dialing into Google Maps, if we didn't know the final destination we wanted to get to, it'd sure be tough to chart the route. So think about how you want your remote story to end and your experience with Overpass, or begin for that matter. Where are you at today? Goal setting requires some pretty brutal honesty, right? Of being realistic. Hey, I'm sitting here and I don't have the best tech equipment. Maybe I don't have the best microphone. And I really wish I had an extra bedroom so I had a dedicated space. As you guys can tell, this is not a digital background. There's no weird stuff. This is, you know, this is where I live, this is my office, but it is a home office, right? I invest a lot into my workspace because a personal goal of mine was to make sure I always had the tool to do the job right. What does your roadmap look to get there? So you type that into Google Maps, you put in your final destination. What's the first thing it does? It gives you 1 or 2 or 3 different routes that you can look at. And then what pieces need to happen in one order? If I'm here today and I want to be over here in, let's say, 2 years, what are the steps I have to take over the next 2 years? So it's taking that dream or big goal and breaking it down into little sections that are manageable, attainable, realistic, et cetera. We're going to talk about that now. A cute story. I remember my first goal setting experience, and I think it was in 1988. And I was in the Army, but I also sold life insurance at night after work. And like we've all probably had happen sometime in our life, somebody goes, hey, I've got this unique business opportunity. Well, later that night, I end up in an Amway meeting in somebody's living room. And it was the first time in my life anybody had ever talked about how to set a goal. And it was not that robust. It was pull out a slip of paper, put the 5 things on there you want in your life, and put it back into your wallet next to your money so you look at it every day. And I was like, well, okay. It was a good place to start. I think I had one like worthwhile goal at my current age, I think, was I wanted a family, but the others consisted of things like I want a diamond ring for my wife, and I want a 1-ton pickup truck, and I want a Rolex watch, and I want my own business. Not really realistic goals, nor were they time segmented, nor were they specific, nor were they measurable, nor were they were attainable. It took me about 7-8 years. Had I planned it out, I probably could have done it in 3, but I ended up with the 1-ton and the Rolex and the business and everything else. It took longer than it probably needed to. And they were time, but what they weren't time-based. And some of them weren't even relevant. Like, did I really need this? You know, you buy something, you look at it, you're like, oh, you know what, I bought that, but oh, well, now I have it. I reached a goal. So it's really putting some thought process into it as far as, does it reach this SMART analogy of specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based? And we're going to go through each one of these individually. And then at the end of the webinar, each week when I come on, I'll always have some sort of thing handout. We'll always have a little bit of extra value for you. Today, we're going to do a PDF doc that you can type right into. That's kind of a goal setting worksheet. So it will help you put into practice what we're just talking about today on the video conference. So does that goal exactly define what you want? Is it specific? Right? You know, I didn't write on that dream sheet I wanted a 3-carat diamond ring. That's what I ended up buying years later. But I mean, like, it wasn't specific, right? It wasn't refined. So how can we set the GPS for that final, for the exact goal that we want, and make sure that we know where we're going and we're going to get to the final destination? Extremely critical. So when we get to the M of the SMART analogy, it talks about measurable. And this is important even for companies, like when they're designing their marketing message. It should be measurable and attainable as far as our company story, right? How far is the destination away? How can I measure the progress? Same analogy, going back to the GPS. You've got your final destination, you planned out the route. It tells you exactly how long it's going to take to get there. We need to do the same thing with our goals, because if they're not measurable, how do we know that we're getting to the end destination? As we travel through in the car with that Google Maps on, it's showing us our progress along the way. And we need to do the same thing when we're defining our goals. When we look at the A of the acronym, it talks about, are they attainable? So is this something based on where I am today and where I want to get to that is even realistic, right? You know, I talked about my goal sheet that I wanted to own my own business. Well, since then, and I actually counted before this meeting because I couldn't remember, and it took me a hot second, I've owned 32 different business models in my life. Obviously, many of those simultaneously. Was it realistic? It wasn't realistic the day I put those 5 things on a piece of paper. I can promise you that. Much more realistic later in my life than it was then. If you are trying to get from India to Australia, how are you going to get there on a bicycle? You got an ocean in the middle, guys. I mean, you got to make sure that it's an attainable goal, that's realistic, that's something that you think that you have a very good chance to succeed if you do the work. When we go to the R of the acronym, is it relevant? Does it get you where you want to go? I've been in job positions myself in my life where I've looked at it and I'm like, is this particular contract or job or client, is it relevant? Is it going to get me where I want to go at the end of the day? And is that where I wanted to be once I get there? And sometimes that answer is no, and that's okay. But when you think about this up front, you can save yourself a whole lot of time, effort, and maybe even money, just making sure that this goal is relevant to how I want my story to end. And then when we look at the T part of the acronym, it talks about, can you define when you arrive? Do you know when you showed up at your destination? Is it time-based? Do you know exactly how long it'll take you to get there? And is it worth the investment, time, money, gasoline, whatever it took to get there? Has anybody ever gone on a vacation? Because I know I have. And I thought this was going to be the dream vacation of it, somewhere I always wanted to be. And I would get there, and after about 2 days, I'd be like, how much money did I just spend? Because I don't even like this place, right? So make sure that it's time-based, time segmented. And once you hit that final destination, it's really where you wanted to be. I live in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. If you guys didn't know, most of our team is remote as well. This was one of my personal goals, that when I had made enough money in my businesses in the US, I wanted to retire in Mexico. I was fortunate, and I got to do that in 2009. A little bit of luck, whole lot of work, somewhere in between intersects, right? But I'll tell you one other thing I did is some acute goal setting. I knew how many years it was going to take me, exactly what I needed to do, how much money I needed in the bank to get here, and what I would need to retire at a pretty early age. I was 42 years old when I moved here. So very segmented, very defined goals is what got me to that end place. And I consider where I live absolute paradise. I mean, it's just gorgeous. I'm 8 blocks from the beach, 8 blocks from the jungle, mountain range behind me, and 9 months of the year, the weather's absolutely perfect, right? I'm originally from Missouri. None of those things apply. It's small, it's rural. And if that's your end goal, for, by all sakes, move to Missouri. I spent 20 years there and couldn't wait to leave in my adult life. So and then look at the next step. So if you're looking at this, it's like, what roadmap are you going to take to get to this final destination? The first thing you have to do there, going back to the beginning, is you got to define how your story ends. Where do I want to get to? What is that ultimate goal? Where do I want to get to? And what's my life going to look like? Or my house, or my car, or my motorcycle, or whatever that goal might be? What's that going to look like once I get there? Again, that brutal assessment of where you are today, being honest with yourself and go, look, because you got to know your starting point. You can find the end point, but if you don't know the starting point, you're not going to be able to plan that route. Make a sub goal list, divide it into pieces. Sometimes I'll hear people and they're like, well, maybe they're 23 years old and it's like, I'm going to be a millionaire. And I always ask the same question. Great. How are you going to get there? And when I hear that there's no game or action plan, I'll often have this exact conversation with them. If you don't know how to get there, I mean, everybody wants to be a millionaire, right? There's game shows called that. But if you don't have a defined plan of how you're going to get from A to B, how do you expect to ever get there? You need to cut that into realistic chunks to make sure you're doing the right things to get to that final destination. Put them in order. There's a logical order no matter what the goal. Let's say I wanted to buy a motorcycle. I think I bought one a couple months ago there. It's out in the driveway. Right? What did I need to do? Well, I needed to save up the money for the motorcycle. I needed to find the unit I wanted. I need to arrange insurance and see what that is. I needed to figure out how to register it. There were all these little sub steps, and just something as simple as, let me go buy a motorcycle. Since I live in Mexico, in the US, registering a vehicle takes about, 10, 20 minutes. Here, you could wait for up to a month and a half to get an appointment to get your license plates. It's shit. I wouldn't have known that. Luckily, I found out before I bought it. So I found somebody that could skip that line and for a little more money, go get it registered for me. So put them in logical order of what you need to do. So when I showed up to the dealership, I had a license plate. I had everything bolted on, ready to go, insured, gone. And then start, because the best plans go for naught if there's no action behind them. So the key thing is once you've got those chunks broke down and you've got them in order, Don't look at that whole sheet. Look at the one specific thing that you need to do to get to the next step and put acute focus into that. And every goal is going to require a little bit of hard work, a little bit of effort, maybe money, maybe not. They don't have to be money-centric goals. I live in a smaller house than I had in the United States. I live a simpler lifestyle than I used to live. In the United States, I drove a BMW X1. Here I drive a Fiat Mobi. It's like a pregnant roller skate that gets 50 miles to the gallon. But it's what makes sense living in Puerto Vallarta where there's no parking and I'm paying $4 a gallon for gas. So start with the first step. Start breaking them out into little bitty chunks and work on that. And we're going to go through this worksheet that I'm going to pass out. I'm just going to show you today of kind of how we're going to go through and organize and do that. But you're going to get, after the meeting, you'll get an email with the actual fillable PDF document. So let's just go through the document, talk about how it works. And I can tell you this, a goal that's not defined, you're probably never going to attain unless you're just lucky. Without these types of practical exercises, it's probably just luck. And I've been just lucky enough to attain a lot of my life goals. In fact, now I work on my wife's life goals because I'm out of them, but that's okay. They're still my goals. But, you know, I've got through a lot of goals, but I had to do all of that little bitty steps, little bitty chunks to find it out and work with purpose and intent to get to that final destination. So I kind of dissected this little worksheet into pieces. But the first one, if you look in this top right corner, it talks about the exact things we just talked about, the SMART acronym. It's just a checklist. Is it specific enough? Is it measurable? Is it attainable? Is it relevant? And is it time-bound or time-based? And then it's got defining that goal, be specific and concise, include the measure and time frame. What's the purpose? Why is it relevant? Define that. Like I remember after I bought the Rolex watch on my list and I had the Rolex and I'm like, oh my God, I travel internationally all the time. I can't even wear this watch and I have to keep it in the safety deposit box. It was the most useless investment I ever made. Luckily, Rolexes don't depreciate. So when I sold it, I got the same money back out of it. Purpose. Does it have purpose? Does it have challenges? What are the challenges to overcome, right? In business, we call this a SWOT analogy. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's what we always write into a business plan or a new product launch to get a realistic view of, hey, what challenges and opportunities do we have before we get started on this particular goal? And then the completion date, when are you going to finish it? From there, chunk it up, put it into those sub steps, those little steps all the way through. When are you going to start it? When are you going to finish it? We're working on an initiative this month in the account executive departments on working to attract a certain type of client that's going to make a better client for you to go to work for, right? My task list looks exactly like this list. It could be a twin of it. Here's what I need to do. Here's what I need to start. Here's what I need to get it finished by. Break it into key steps and just work one step at a time. The only thing you have to worry about is your next deliverable, the next thing on that list. If you define those little mini victories, also make sure you celebrate, right? You know, I put goals in mind that I have for the overpass team, and we hit those goals. Like I think last month we hit a new goal, and so I bought a watch. Luckily, it wasn't a Rolex. I saved a ton of money, but I bought a watch, and I'm like, hey, I always wanted this Swiss Army watch, and it's stupid expensive for just a watch, but I guess you can run over it with a tank and it won't fall apart. I'm like, well, that just seems cool to me, and it's titanium, and it's like cool. And so I did that. You know, my wife's ambition, we're starting an entire business for my wife, right? That's her goal. I'm like, okay, that's a much loftier goal. I have to put that into multiple steps. So where's your measure points? How will I know on pace, right? What do I need to measure? If I'm trying to be a millionaire and I'm now 38 years old and I've only got $100,000 in the bank, you better have a good plan to load up that other 900 grand, right? You better have a good action plan in order to get to that end goal. Obviously, some of that would be you need to have forced savings every single month or you're never going to get there. If you start at 38 and you only got 100 grand, it better be a bunch. If you start at 25 It's not that heavy of a lift. In other words, like in the United States, if you maxed out your retirement plan every single year working in a job like your 401k, on average, you're going to retire a millionaire. It's pretty cool. You're saving a little bit a month. So when you're going to measure it, what's the measure going to be? Date, measure, date, measure, date, measure. When am I going to look at checkpoints to see if I'm on pace? Do I need to work harder at this goal? Do I need to earn more money? Do I want a new client contract? Do I want to move up in position inside my own industry? Do I have the possibilities with this client to do that? Those are all valid questions we should be asking each other every day. I asked those questions to myself when I started with Overpass, right? I wasn't looking for another career. I was looking that I could speak to clients that were people that used to be me, an entrepreneur for the most part, that I could bring some value to the table and earn some extra money and not go buy a bigger sailboat. That was my goal. Stay out of the marina, because that's a very expensive, stupid habit. I've had it. I've got over it. I'm over it. So today it's Overpass. So that's kind of the outline of what I had for today. And I wanted to do a shorter segment today because we want to make sure we stop this about the half hour. So you guys have plenty of time for questions and answers. The questions are always better if they relate to the topic, but they don't have to be. I mean, I know even in our Facebook page for contractors, you'll see me in there every once in a while. And there's a lot of different questions that come up. This is a great forum to have it because during the day, like me and I don't have a whole lot of outreach time to spend like we will in these meetings. So it doesn't matter how long it takes. Let's just walk through the questions. If it's something I can field, I will. And if it's something that's very Mia specific in the talent acquisition department, we'll turn it right back over to her. So Mia, let's go ahead and open this up for some Q&A.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Dennis. Extremely, extremely helpful. And just so everyone knows, we will be sending all of this information out to you, both the recording of this webinar, as well as those PDFs that Dennis just went through to help you on your own goal setting journey. If anyone does have a question, feel free to ask either in the chat or in the Q&A aspect of this webinar, and Dennis or I will be happy to answer them. So I'll give everyone a few moments to type something in, and then we'll go from there.
See some people already defining a goal or two in there in the chat.
I saw Sylvia.
Good job. Go Sylvia, go.
It looks really good. Great. We have a couple of questions. So Sylvia had a question. She says, aside from what we'll be getting via email, meaning your PDFs, what else would you suggest, Dennis, for one to do to reach a new goal, like a mindset specifically?
Well, obviously, we kind of outlined it in the presentation, but I think the most important part is the very first question of defining how your story ends, right? It's like, make sure when you're setting that goal that it is attainable and measurable, but make sure it's where you want to get to. Now, did that specifically answer your question, or was it deeper than that?
Let me let Sylvia talk. Give me 1 second. I don't want to let her go for too long. Sylvia, you can go ahead and speak if you want to be more specific about your question. You can unmute and ask Dennis.
Sure. So right now I'm trying to jump from making this much X amount of commissions from my sales. I want to level up, let's say, I don't know, jump the next step in getting larger commissions. Mm-hmm. So I've noticed that I myself have some challenges. Like, for example, my mindset can be turned off. Like, I can get to that very downside. Like, when you get a no, it's really hard, right? I've been in sales for 10 years, but that no still kind of gets my panties in a bunch. So I guess my question is, would you recommend the mindset of it, 2-3 no's is going to equal 5-6 yeses type of thing?
I tell you what I do, because we're all going to have bad client calls. I have them, you're going to have them.
Right.
And because we're in sales, we have the habit of dealing with rejection. I'll tell you what I personally do is I put little time segments in my entire day. Now, in some other episodes, we're going to talk
Okay.
about sharpening the saw and a lot of things you can do. But I'm going to talk about something really practical and really easy. In my office, if I was moving the camera around, there's a Pilates ball, there's a peddler underneath my desk, there's 2 dumbbells over there. Like when I've had a call like that, I just take 5 and I go do a
Okay.
circle. I'm like, you know what? I just need to get that out of my head before I get back on the phone. Because if I transpose that to the next call, I'm letting a client mess up my entire day, or a customer, right?
Absolutely. That makes sense.
And so, you know, and people are like, oh man, I got to make this many dials. And I'm like, if your next dial, if you're still mad about your previous dial or feel rejected about your previous dial because you had a rude customer, shake it off. I don't know if it's going to take you 10 seconds or 10 minutes, but shake it off before you get back on that phone, because it's going to transpose. It's going to bleed over to the next
Right.
line. And we
That's
think
true.
that we're mentally strong enough that that's not going to happen. I got to tell you, Sylvia, I've been doing this for 30 years on and off in sales. It still happens to me.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
we'll get a client that comes in and they have unrealistic expectation of what they're going to pay you guys, and they don't have their act together, and they don't have a sales strategy, and then they're obnoxious as well. Those are tough calls for me to work through, right? I'm like, oh, and you're obnoxious.
Right.
No joy. So, you know, I just get through the call. I intentionally detach myself from my workspace, even if it's for just a few seconds. Take a breath, I shake it off, and I don't take the next meeting until I know my head's right. Does that help?
It sure does. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank
Anybody
you
else
so
have
much,
questions?
Sylvia.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we actually have quite a few, Dennis. You're super popular. Oh, so we
Well,
have
they'll get used to me later and they won't show up. Don't worry.
So we have an interesting question from Jareen. I think the next couple I can answer, Dennis. So Jareen Harris asked, how can I get my profile to pass an overpass if I don't have any sales experience? So Jareen, unfortunately at this time, clients on overpass do require contractors to have at least a year or so of outbound phone-based sales experience. So if you do end up getting that experience, definitely feel free to create a profile with us and we'll be happy to evaluate your profile at that time. But as of now, clients do require contractors to have that sales experience. Next question is from Mohammed. Or from Aslam, I apologize. This is my first time here. How do I join Overpass? Oh my goodness. Well, that's an amazing question. I will definitely put our contractor registration kind of link in the chat. So basically you sign on there, you create a profile with us, you submit the profile, and after a few days, one of our talent advocates will get back to you to review it and make sure that you have the right experience for the platform. So I will do that at the end of the presentation for you, Aslam, so that you'll be able to get started on your profile. Dennis, I think we're back to you with this next one. Juan asks, can you give an example of how you handled people who were against your goals?
I'll answer this one from the personal side, not necessarily the overpass side. How's that? I literally will, and I think that some of you guys have maybe seen a video that I did as a promotion for overpass maybe a year ago. I don't know. But one of the first intros and the first thing out of my mouth is I look at everything I want in my life and eliminate everything that's not that. So that's what I do personally. It's like, oh, if you're killing my joy and you're not part of my dream, sorry, but I'm eliminating you from my future. I will literally just ignore it, walk by it, or systematically drive until I reach that goal. Now, that's a benefit of my personality type. You know, when the shrink would tell you I have a very powerful personality type, but we can all do that. Every one of us have the ability to do that. Hey, this person's not adding any value in my life. This client's not adding any value in my life. This job's not giving me any value in my life. It's probably time to make a change. You know, the good news about Overpass is we've got new opportunities every single day, you know, as it relates to work. But what I intentionally do is I put laser focus on where I'm going, and I will literally ignore, walk past, around, under, or over any obstacle in my way. And I think our CEO would agree with that after getting to know me.
I think that's very true.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Wow, you're just getting very good comments in the chat now, Dennis. We have a couple more. This actually is for you, Dennis, being a sales manager. This one is from an anonymous attendee. This person wants to start their own call center. How can Overpass help? So I will let you answer that one, Dennis.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Obviously, if you wanted to start your own call center, you would become a client side instead of being on the contractor side. So you could literally use Overpass for not only the system to have those people work off of, but to actually find the talent as well. So what that would be is a role reversal. Now, I'm also going to highly recommend that first you do a business plan. I can give you a link, or if you have a pencil, write down liveplan.com, liveplan.com. Liveplan.com is one of the best business plan modelers that I've ever seen. And I've used them since they came out in floppy disks in the 90s, like a long time. Obviously, it's all web-based now. It's a very good program, and it's just an enrollment fee every month. Write out your business plan. Make sure your goals are defined of exactly what you want. Make sure you have enough fiscal reserve or financial reserve to hire the people you're going to need for your call center, and then execute. Now, that process you're not going to do in a weekend. It usually took me 2 weeks to a month to write a good business plan, just so you know. And I've probably written 100 of them in my life, like a lot.
Perfect. Thank you, Dennis. For Aslam, I also just put in the chat the steps to become a contractor on Overpass. So if others would like to join us, please go ahead and follow those steps for your profile to get reviewed. Next question is from Deanna. What do you guys recommend to do when dealing with so many people hanging up the phone before even hearing who you are or where you're calling from? What types of strategies would you recommend to catch their attention in different ways?
Okay, so I'm going to do a whole segment on this as far as getting around gatekeepers and intro to conversations, but let me just go through some basics of that. One thing that a lot of us have the bad habit of doing it, and if you look at your sales script or your client sales script, you're going to see that it's very selly. The second you received a selly over the phone, you're going to get a disconnect. So even in what we do for a living, even though the client's already registered, when I have that initial meeting with them, there's 12 different questions I ask them. I'm asking that to engage in two-way conversation. Is that going to eliminate the fact that you're going to get hung up on? No, it's still going to happen, but you're going to find it happens a lot less. So a lot of times we have a tendency to go, here's everything we do, and it's the best thing since chipped beef. Worst way ever to start a conversation. It'll end up in a customer hang up every time. So it's like, get into the two-way conversation, ask the right questions, ask meaningful questions that guide you in to giving them the sales proposition or your value proposition of your product or service in pieces naturally in a conversation rather than one big gob. If I gave you our client value proposition, it's 3 paragraphs. I've never read that all at one time in my life, but every presentation I'm on, I'll cut it up into 12 pieces and deliver it. Does that help?
I think it does. Thanks, Dennis. Dana said absolutely with multiple exclamation points. I think you did a pretty good job explaining, Dennis. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? I don't see any other open questions on the Q&A or chat. So does anyone have any further questions for either myself or Dennis? Oh, yes. From an anonymous attendee, if you were to set goals in this present climate that we live in, is that 1 to 3 year goal more realistic to set versus like the 5 to 10 year time spans?
I'm going to say the latter. I'm going to say, look at that 5 to 10 year goal. One thing about it, when you get as old as I am, you know that markets are cyclic. Something like COVID is always going to happen. In 2002, 2008, 2009, it was an economic recession. In 1999, it was the middle of the .bomb where every .com entity blew up. I actually started a software company in 1999, web-based. By the way, I ended up in 43 states and sold it out to a Fortune 500 company. So I'm like, no, I would definitely recommend that you look at that 5 or 10 year plan, break it into chunks with this caveat. Because of a market condition or a world condition, you may not get one of those done in time. Don't beat yourself up over it if it's an external factor that affected it. Just get through that step, go to the next step, and keep plugging away. That answer is super easy for me.
Thanks, Dennis. Next question from Isabel Moya. She asks, do you use a specific voice pitch when you contact a client? Interesting one.
Well, if you noticed, I am not a big man, but somehow I was blessed with this bass voice. So it seems to present well, whether I want it to or not. But I think you're asking like a certain voice inflection. And we can do a whole segment on that. That's actually an amazing question. And it's called neuro-linguistical programming. And we could literally do a whole 30-minute segment on that. And I could talk to you about anything from posture to smile while you talk to, if you happen to be on video, pulling customer signs back. What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean, etc. What does this mean? What does this mean as a rule? In fact, I think that'd be a great segment to break out that I didn't have on the list. So let's do a segment on neuro-linguistic programming, and I could give you all kind of tips on that.
Thanks, Dennis. I've made a note of that as well. Thank you, Isabel. Next question is from Melvin. And I think, Melvin, I'm going to have you ask this question live because I think it may be easier to explain. He asked, do you have cold email projects? So Melvin, I'm going to let you speak. And can you ask Dennis, maybe give him a bit more detail on the question?
You're on mute, Melvin.
Oh, you're on mute. There we go.
Okay. Hello. I'm asking if you have like cold email projects with outreach or Salesforce, sending emails to the prospects. It's like instead of a voice project, it will be a written project.
You're talking about warm lead funnels. We don't have a lot of those positions that come available, but every once in a while, we'll have a marketing specific position that comes available inside of a client that already has several salespeople in their team. Now, Melvin, saying that, we have an extremely defined way of doing that when we outreach with clients. We have a sales sequence and a cadence for every single customer, and even vary the marketing message by 4 different market segments of how clients join up with Overpass. So if you're asking me if that's a great idea, absolutely. If you're asking me, do we have a lot of positions inside Overpass with our clients that ask for that? We don't have a lot, but they do come available. I would make sure that you mention in your profile that you're an expert at that, or that that's a skill set that you would like to work in. And I'll tell you why. When we're searching for contractors to put with a client, we look at 3 core things. What your published rate is, needs to be competitive. Do you have relative industry experience and what that client's looking for, right? And are you tagged as ready to work or looking for opportunities? Those 3 things we 100% of the time look for, no matter who, when we're trying to match contractors up with clients. Make sure that's listed in your profile, because once we find a batch, we go through and read your profile one at a time. And if I read that in your profile and I have a client that wants it, you are going to be on an interview. Doesn't guarantee you're going to get hired, but you're going to be on the interview. I'm like, oh, here's someone that has that unique skill set. Let me get him in this interview.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Melvin. Next question is from Archant, kind of similar with this theme of communicating over the phone. Yes. How do you handle rude or irate gatekeepers?
So again, I do have a whole segment on getting around gatekeepers, but just some cute tricks, not tricks. There's the first thing. Don't get tricky. Be professional, be candid, but have a value-based reason of why you need to engage with that person's beyond that gatekeeper. And many times even making friends with the gatekeeper will get you past them. And I'm not talking about you're going to go have cocktails together, obviously, right? I'm talking about they receive you as being very friendly, very pleasant. And I say a lot of things like, hey, I don't want to take anybody's time. Would you just pass me over his email address and let me send him some information first? Oh, and by the way, what's his extension number? They may not give me the extension number, but I'm still going to ask, right? I'm still going to ask for it. So a lot of it is managing the relationship with that gatekeeper. And some of them are just rude, and they're going to be rude to the next 20 people that call them. And it's literally just, you have to be the calming voice of that. You can't flinch, and you have to very nicely, but firmly tell them the reason that you need to speak to this particular person and get around them to get to your lead source. Many times I'll do that by just getting an email address to start. I'll send them a little bit of messaging in an email, but not telling you what Overpass does. to build curiosity. And that will engage with a client meeting. Now I've got their contact info. Now we're moving down the trail. And we'll have a whole episode on this because I know it's a very common thing that you guys run into. And when I say guys, I mean girls too. I'm sorry. I'm from the Ozarks. So that's like asexual name there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dennis. Next question, I think we both can answer is from Anonymous. Does Overpass help you get a position in SaaS and account management or inbound sales, or is it specifically outbound? So Dennis, maybe you want to answer from the client side and I can answer from the contractor side.
Yeah, I'll tell you the percentage wise, probably about 80 to 85% of our clients are looking for outbound, but we do have that other 15, 20% that does have inbound opportunities. And we have several clients on the books where it's 100% inbound. When you relate to SaaS, we have a lot of SaaS clients. We will keep having a lot of SaaS clients. We will always have SaaS clients. It's one of the things that is like our superpower is the SaaS industry, software as a service, in case anybody didn't know what that was. Excuse me.
Awesome. Thank you. From the contractor side, really heighten your chances of getting noticed for something like this by being very specific in your responsibilities, as well as any relevant sales metrics that you had. So did you have a sales quota? How many sales you were making per day? Things like that. Just be as detailed as possible, because that's what clients and our sales team will be looking at when pushing you to those clients who are largely inbound sales. Thanks for the question. Next question from Edwin. How recently does someone have to be in the outbound or telemarketing arena to be able to work for Overpass? If I do face-to-face sales and I want to get back to phone selling, can I do that with you guys?
So that's an absolutely. Like, and I don't know if Mia should answer that or me, but what we're looking at is relative previous experience. To give you an idea, when I came to work for Overpass, I hadn't had a normal job since 1997. Now, I spent 250 days a year on an airplane in 6 different countries selling stuff. But even if you look at when I boarded on, it took me probably a month to sharpen the saw to get refine my skill set of working remotely. Right. And I know one of the first things I did is every single call I can possibly take on a Google Meet, I do. It's rare that I use my phone just because it gives me one more strategic edge if I can get that client on video. Now, many of your contracts, that's not a possibility. And I understand that. And the other thing is just sharpen that saw. But I think you'll find that me and her team have an acute superpower sense of knowing if you've got the relative experience. And we're not necessarily looking at, oh, you hadn't worked for 4 years? No way. Absolutely. Tell me about that experience. Would that be a correct answer, me, on your side as well?
Yeah, generally, I will say if you're within the time horizon, if it's before like 10 years, we have to look at it a bit more closely because clients can be like, well, what were they doing in sales for the past 10 years? So I would say if there's anything you can put on your profile to just demonstrate either your continued experience or your continued work in the field, that's very helpful. Because from a time perspective, if we see that the last one was in like 2007 or in the 90s, it's like, there's been a lot that's changed since then. You know, how are you keeping up to pace with, you know, what clients' needs are? So for a hard number, I'd say 5 to 7 years, 10 on the profile that we're looking at. But just like Dennis said, we do have a lot of contractors who have, you know, worked for a long time, but haven't had a real job in a long time, but have the necessary skill set to, you know, have them be successful with clients. So as we've been saying, just be as detailed as possible on the profile, provide as much information as possible, and wait to hear from us. Thanks, Edwin. Next one from Dexter. How do you handle a not interested objection? How do you respond?
Okay, so not interested. Well, the first thing I'm always going to do is respond with a question. That's the very first thing I'm going to say. Right. And then the other thing is there's some key steps there. We're going to have a whole breakout meeting on this, but is it a question? Is it a comment? Or is it a hard objection? Usually when you hear not interested, it means one of two things. They're either trying to brush you off to get off the phone, or you haven't done a good job of establishing two-way conversation, building interest and curiosity in that customer, and you went and gave them the value proposition too soon. In other words, you came across as too selly. Their immediate gut reaction is not interested, right? Like I have many clients that go, I don't have the budget. And I'm like, well, wait, do you not have the budget, or have you not looked at your budget to figure out what's a priority And shouldn't this be a priority to bring new revenue into your business over other items that might be on that ledger? And a lot of times they'll go, well, yeah, that's a good point. Right. And they'll end up boarding contractors, right? So are you engaged in two-way conversation? I'm always going to ask the why. I'm not interested. Why? Is it something that I did? Did I not do a good job of explaining the value proposition? Or did I come across to you as too selly? Have your customer give you critique on your own performance. There's no harm, no foul. I'd rather hear the brutal truth as I would be in a bad habit for a year and have it cost me $50,000 in income before I figure out that that's what I'm doing. So even with my AEs and with all my sales experience, when we finish up a meeting, I'm like, hey, let's rehash that. What did I say? Did that come across well? What can we do better next time? And a lot of times they look at me like I'm a Martian going, that was perfect. I'm like, well, okay, in your estimation, it wasn't, but great, thanks. Just, and we do those little after action reviews and we critique each other. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Thank you. Another question from Archant. On the client side, do star ratings really matter?
Interesting question. So the star rating system that we have is not very mature because it only happens when a contract ends, and it's only been in place for 6 to 8 months. So many times if a client will say, oh, I'm looking at that star rating, and I'm not sure about this one. If we know you or we've had you on another contract, we're going to go, I'm going to ask you not to take that in consideration, and here's why. And so we can talk past that, but are they important? Especially on like our computer algorithm, like recommends profiles as well. They are important. Clients look at them every single day, all the time. We're having conversations down the road about maybe refining that system and have it to where you have more constant feedback. So it kind of makes more sense because you could be on the same contract for 2 years and never get a star rating. So is it important? Yes. Can we talk around it sometimes if we know there's an outstanding situation? Yes. And are we going to improve that in the future? The plan is yes.
Awesome. Thanks. Yes to everything on the contractor side as well. Question from Sylvia again. How would you respond to, can I have more information? That question is very broad.
Yeah, and it's usually brushing you off, just so you know. Can you send me more info? And I immediately say, anytime someone asks, oh, can you just send me some more info? Sure, I could, and I will when this call's over. But I need to touch on a couple more key points before we finish today to make sure I'm sending you the right information. Let me understand your need a little bit more. How many people are in your organization? How long have you been in business? How many people, how many salespeople do you have on staff right now? Full-time, or are you looking to start a new team? And I'll go right back to asking questions, and I'm going to draw them right back into that two-way conversation again.
Perfect. Thank you. Question from Anonymous. It'd be great if you guys could introduce payment options for contractors that work in most of the countries. Any R&D on that? Is anything coming up? Great question. I can actually answer that. So we have heard this from contractors for a while now. We have recently expanded our billing team, and they are actively looking into alternative payment methods. So rest assured, you all will be the first to know, and it is actually happening. The person sitting behind me is working on that as we speak. So we definitely want to make sure we're, able to have everyone come and, be able to get paid when they can. So we will be, working on that, and we'll let all of you know when we have something. Good question.
And I've even been in some of those meetings because it's such a big concern.
Yes.
So I'm like, I can verify everything Mia just said, because some of those meetings I've been in, even though it's not really my wheelhouse.
Right. Thank you. Okay, I'm being cognizant of time. I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions before we wrap up. So if anyone has any last questions, this is your chance. Oh, question from Anonymous. Any chance you guys will be bringing in clients from APAC or the EU?
No, here's why. Not today. There's no plans to do that today. 100% of our focus on clients is in US and Canadian companies, to the point that we built our own dialer on the Overpass platform. it's not even capable of calling outside the US and Canada. That is our only market segment that we're focused on. Now, as a subsegment of that question, we do have international clients on the platform, international companies, but they're all doing business in the US or Canada. I do not see that changing anytime in the near future. And I'm just telling you where we're at. Does that mean we wouldn't have a company out of that country? No, we could have a client out of that country, but would they be using the Overpass tools and be speaking in their native tongue? No, not at all.
Yes. Thank you. I assumed as much, but Dennis, you put it more eloquently than I would. Awesome. Okay, last call. We have 5 minutes left. Last call. This will probably be our last question. Okay, another question. Any tips you want to share to be the best AE or SDR? Thanks so much, Dennis.
We just went over part of them, setting your goals. But I think one of the most important critical things remote work, and if you guys will look what's behind me in my video, setting up your work environment to be productive in. And the second thing is always look for ways for self-development. And that's why we'll keep passing out tools with these meetings, because I want to keep giving you tools and stuff that you can really sink your teeth into to become better account executives and to become better salespeople. So that's the intent of this meeting. We're going to keep bringing tools to you. But just the first thing out of my, I was like, before you think of doing anything as far as a goal, if it's work related, get your workspace right. Internet, and that goes for internet, speaker, microphone, camera, all in. Make sure it's flawless.
If anyone is on our Facebook group, they've seen how beautiful Dennis's workstation is and his several monitors that he has set up in his
I
home
look like a
office.
freak. I look like a video gamer kid. I've got monitors everywhere, but I use them all.
No, it's perfect. Awesome. Well, I want to spend the last few moments just to wrap up, kind of give everyone an idea of where we're going next. As Dennis mentioned, these webinars will be conducted weekly. We do have an idea of where we want to go regarding subject matter, but as we heard today, we came up with a new subject that we wanted to discuss, given your feedback. So tell your friends about this. We really want to ensure our contractors are having a great experience and being the best that they can be. In the next couple of days, I will be sending both a recording of this webinar as well as the materials that Dennis presented on today. So all of you can have a chance to review them and look over them. You could email me back with any questions, and you should see more information like this coming soon. We really appreciate you all coming today for our very first one. This was a lot of fun, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks so much again, everyone.
Happy selling all.
Bye-bye.